some important terms that we talked about before, but they're worth noting again because we're going to talk about many of these terms on an ongoing basis. So again, repetition is the mother of skill, right? So premium, what is the premium? It's the amount of money paid by a buyer, paid to a seller when the buyer purchases an options contract. So that's known as the premium, very similar to the premium in car insurance, right? So I pay a premium to insure my car. I pay money to the insurance company. They keep the money and they're agreeing to fix my car if I get into a wreck with it. Same analogy. Strike price. What is the strike price? The strike price is the price at which the options contract can be exercised. So when we're selling options, when we're writing options, remember those two words are synonymous. Selling options and writing options, that's the same thing. We're writing contracts with a particular or a specific strike price. And that is the price at which we may have to buy the stock if it dips to that level. So that's, again, that's called the strike price. Exercise, what does exercise mean? Exercise is also known as a sign. So if you're exercised on a contract, if you're assigned on a contract, that means that you have to buy the stock that you wrote the option on. So in other words, it's to put into effect the right specified by the options contract. For example, if I'm selling a put on Apple with a strike price of $200 that expires next Friday. If Apple ends next Friday, between now and next Friday, $200 or lower, meaning that I may have to buy that stock at $200. That means that I'm assigned or exercised on the contract. That's what that term means. Expiration date. Expiration date, all contracts, all options contracts have expiration dates. Those are going to be the last date that the options contract is valid. So once the contract expires, there's no more risk on the part of either party, the buyer or the seller. So basically, by the expiration date, really one of two things will happen. The stock will be higher or lower than the strike price. If we sell a put and the underlying stock is trading lower than what the strike price is, we will have to buy that underlying stock at that particular strike price. So again, that's expiration date. So the last date that the options contract is valid. Delta, super important term. What is delta? Delta is the statistical likelihood that a stock will go from here to here between now and some date in the future. So it's going to go from where it's trading now to the strike price before the expiration date of the contract. Why is that important? It's very important to understand likelihoods because the world is all about statistics and probabilities of things, right? So the reason why we have to be so concerned and so sort of, understanding of what the delta is of things is because we have to understand what the likelihood is of that particular contract perhaps being assigned, right? So that's important to know. Let's see. Let me move forward. We're going to talk a little bit about spreadsheets today. So in the if you're a participant in this class, that means that you have access to the Facebook group. So the Facebook group is I Trade Like a Boss for elite members. Everyone who are participants currently have access to the Facebook group, and that is where we're going to put updates relative to this particular class. That's where I'm going to include the links for the live class, any files that we talk about, for example, spreadsheets that we talk about will be in that Facebook group. We're also going to include the PowerPoint, like these particular PowerPoints that I go through, as well as the videos. So one of the links that I uploaded very recently is spreadsheet of rates of return, also known as ROR. So there are some participants in this class. Many participants in the class have been listening to the class via the recorded versions and not necessarily live. And some people have been, moving forward a little bit faster than others and have already opened themselves accounts and things like that with Interactive Brokers. So what I want to do in the interest of helping everyone as much as possible, is I want to upload and talk about some of the information, even though it might be a little bit ahead of what I had originally intended on our class. So a spreadsheet of ROR, we're going to go through that a little bit later as well, but please look in the Facebook group. Basically, this is a spreadsheet that you'll want to use in order to make educated decisions on whether or not you want to make a trade, right? So for example, you're going to input into the spreadsheet. This is just a photo of a screenshot, but the actual spreadsheet is in the Facebook group. It's uploaded as a Mac document as well as Excel if you have a PC. So you have both versions there. You want to input the underlying security. Let's say Apple as an example here on the screen. What the strike price is. So the strike price that you're considering selling the option on. It's handy to look and evaluate what the delta is. So this is a strike price that I put on here recently. The delta was less than 5. So remember, that's kind of our sweet spot. So a delta, disregard what the negative or the positive, because it says negative 0.042. You want to look at that as 4.2. So there's approximately a 4.2% likelihood that Apple will go from where it's trading now to the strike price of $165 between now and the expiration date of May 17th. So you want to just input those variables of the contract that you're looking at, right? Let's see. Sorry about that. Quantity. So there is, that's a field that you'll put. Okay, are you selling, 1? Are you selling 2? Are you selling 5 contracts? That quantity is how many contracts that you're selling. Now remember, 1 contract is equal to 100 shares. So if, for example, you're selling quantity 1 Apple put, if Apple dips from where it is now to $165 between now and expiration date, you may be required to purchase 100 shares. So each contract is worth 100 shares of that underlying stock. So keep that in mind as you make your decisions. Price. So this is the price at which you're looking to sell the option. Also, very similar to what we just talked about a moment ago, times 100. The price will also be times 100. So when you're looking at the price from the custodian, for example, this particular price indicates 0.45. What you'll do is multiply that times 100 to equal your amount of dollars in your pocket that you'll receive from selling that option. So in this case, you'll receive $45 if you were to sell that option. Margin, you'll want to input the margin. So we're going to talk about it more specifically a few moments from now, but there's initial margin and maintenance margin. Whatever you're familiar with, I typically will use the initial margin. That's the higher of the two in order to make my trading decision. So that's the higher value of the two between initial margin and maintenance margin. The ROR, all these other fields, ROR, days to hold, ROR annualized, and ROR annualized to max exposure and max exposure. Those are formulas that are in the spreadsheet that I've uploaded to the Facebook group. So those you don't have to type anything in. The document will automatically calculate those numbers for you. Now, why is this spreadsheet important? This shows you really what your rate of return annualized is, and as well as your maximum exposure. So your maximum exposure on the trade, typically what that's going to represent is if I was to get assigned on that trade and I had to, let's say, buy that particular stock at that strike price, what is the dollar value that I'll need in my account to affect that trade, to make that trade happen? So in this case, we'll just use round numbers and we'll just do the math. It's pretty easy. If Apple was to drop between from where it is now to 165 between now and the expiration date, and if I needed to buy 100 shares of Apple at the strike price, remember, it doesn't matter what price it drops to, I would be purchasing it at the strike price. 100 shares times $165 strike price, I would need $16,500. So that's my max exposure, right? Does everybody see that in the column here? So you wanna be cognizant of that number, because as we enter trades as we go along, and perhaps you're looking at, let's say, Apple and some other underlyings and things like that. You want to make sure you have enough money in your account to be able to purchase, the stock if you were to get assigned. We're going to talk about that more as the class goes on, but that's important in the spreadsheet. The rate of return, this ROR, 3%. That's 3% for the 36-day holding period. So the holding period, how is that day calculated? Basically, that's the expiration date minus today. So again, you'll see the formulas in the spreadsheet uploaded to the Facebook group, okay? If I annualize that number out, this is the column that I'm really paying attention to mostly. ROR annualized. So assuming that the option does not get exercised or not get assigned, and we don't have to buy that particular stock. Remember, as we move forward, the intention is that we're going to enter trades, in which case 98% of all of our trades get expire worthless. So only 2% of the time may we be required to actually purchase the underlying stock. So as we go through this course, I'm going to show you how to make trades in that regard, only 2% of the time. So that's why you want to pay attention to this column. And this is why I say, I can teach you how to make at least 10% annualized on your money. You'll see this particular trade makes a little bit over 30%. Personally, I typically don't enter trades unless they make over 25% annualized. So typically when I'm doing my work, if this column does not have a number in excess of 25%, I typically won't make that trade. And also sometimes we'll look at the rate of return annualized to the maximum exposure. So what this means is, like, if the stock does get assigned and I have to pay the $16,500 to actually purchase the 100 shares of Apple, remember, at the strike price of 165, how much money am I making relative to what I'm putting up and what I'm taking in premium? So that's what these numbers represent. Again, this is kind of like a preview. We're going to go through much more in depth as we go along, but it's a preview and it's uploaded. If you're already opening an account through Interactive Brokers, and if you're already starting to, let's say, paper trade or real-time trade, this spreadsheet will be very beneficial to you, okay? Also, another spreadsheet that I uploaded this morning to the Facebook group. Today, we're going to talk about intrinsic value. What is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value is kind of, basically, it's how much a stock should be trading at. And there's lots of different ways that we can calculate intrinsic value, right? In this class, we're going to go through a couple of different ways that we calculate that. We're going to go through two in particular today. This is a spreadsheet as well, like I noted a moment ago, that's uploaded to the Facebook group. So it's something that you'll want to put your the underlying stocks that you're interested in trading, you'll want to input those into the spreadsheet. So some important things to keep track of: PE ratio, growth, earnings per share, dividends, the dividend yield. There are two different equations we're going to walk through in today's session to calculate the intrinsic value, the current price, and then where is the price trading at relative to where we think it should be trading at.